Okay, short selling. So at the moment, short selling makes up roughly 5 to 10% of the fund. When we short sell, we're ultimately targeting areas of the fund that are losing. Thank you, James, that are losing from our winners, if that makes sense. And so the losers shorting's not a big part of the fund because we're in a bull market, so we want to save it for when we're in a bear market. The losers we see at the moment are really around companies exposed to China. So not Chinese companies, but things like L'Oreal has been a good short for us. Luxury goods, but we're probably not shorting those anymore. Obviously companies that are affected by tariffs, and there we're looking at sort of auto companies, etc. White collar industries are being disrupted by AI, and then disruptable retail. We've been short things like H&M. One of the shorts that we had that was quite a good one this year, just to give you an example, is GLP-1. So you know that we like Eli Lilly, and we talked about Novo Nordisk in the past, but we don't own it today. We thought we've owned those GLP-1 stocks for 3 years. There was a point this year where we worked out that roughly 8% of the US population is taking GLP-1s. And so when I mean GLP-1s, I mean Ozempic, I mean Wegovy, okay? So that 8% of the entire US population is taking them today. It's about $80 or $100 billion per annum. And what that's doing is actually shrinking beer consumption, would you believe it? I know it's dear to my heart as well. But beer consumption has fallen for 3 years in a row. The other thing that's forcing beer down is the rise of legalised marijuana, which is ultimately causing the entire beer industry to shrink. So we were short things like Heineken, Carlsberg, Constellation brands, and that was an okay short for us as well. But I don't want to overplay that they're making up a large part of returns. Ultimately, shorts are a bit like your left foot. You kick better with your right, but sometimes it's handy to be able to kick with your left, and right now, we think this is a right foot market, quite frankly. A lot of you are doing that yourself. In Australia, there are great companies. So if you think of our 6 great qualities of a great growth company, there are lots of them. Just think about, if you've got to grow your earnings. You need to be able to do it durably. You have to have good ESG principles. You need to have controlling or highly aligned management and great customer perception. They're the 6 qualities of a great growth company. And they do exist in Australia. Macquarie Bank's the one that always comes to mind for me. I think it's a wonderful institution that has built a great culture over a very long period of time, and that's why they consistently win, not just in Australia, but globally. Computershare would be another good example. So there are good companies in Australia that we like, but ultimately Australia is dominated by banks and resources, and home cyclicals, like supermarkets and stuff. And so most of the companies in Australia are just not interesting to us. The other thing that people should realise, okay, so this is the US S&P over time. And so basically you can see it sort of stopped becoming cyclical a while ago. It's turning in, it looks like one of our structural growth charts. And that's because the US is basically the right pond to fish in. And the reason why is because they don't just have banks and supermarkets in America. They've got the software company for the world. It's called Microsoft. They've got the search engine for the world. It's called Google. They've got the social network for the world. It's called Meta. They've got this streaming service for the world. It's called Netflix, okay? And so every time you watch the Channel 7 share price or the Channel 9 share price go down, it's essentially advertising dollars just disappearing to Google and Meta. And advertising dollars or streaming dollars, Foxtel dollars disappearing to Netflix. Does that make sense? And then America's doing that to every single country on the planet, okay? That's what's happening. Every single country has exactly the same problem that Australia has because they're all ending up in America, okay? And the reason why they keep getting invented in America is not because they're smarter. I mean, well, maybe they are, but it's just because there's more people there. There's more people and they've got more money, okay? So like the other good example here is GYG is like really good Mexican food. It's like a $3 billion company, probably slightly overvalued, quite frankly. Chipotle is the same good really Mexican food and it's an $80 billion company. Does that make sense? So if you invent a good idea, it's more likely to take off in America than it is in Australia. Even if we invented Google here, it would have eventually got taken by the Americans. And so these are the advantages that they have. That chart, the S&P 500, is then just sucking the P&L away from Australia. We think we're fishing in the right pond. We've said this for years. Every year someone asks me how big can the Mag 7 get? Guess what? They get bigger every year because of this phenomenon. And ultimately we don't really see it stopping in the short term.
Yeah, sorry, I should have made this clear. Our investments are in the US and they're actually existing nuclear. So that existing nuclear is going to become more scarce as the other baseload powers shut. And those existing nuclear owners of those plants become more valuable basically because they can up-price their power, increase the capacity of their plants. And so that's more interesting to us than, say, new nuclear Although there is some growth in new nuclear in Eastern Europe and things like that. And you can buy some picks and shovels on that. But most of our investments are in existing nuclear. Thank you.
So as of now, it's a really good question. Honestly, for the pure software companies, we haven't really come to a conclusion. What we do know is whatever that's come out of is going to be hugely disruptive. So where we've had the most success in so far is actually in existing internet companies or even companies like Axon. I mean, they have the data lake, what we call the walled garden. They have a lot of the existing preparatory data where clearly AI is going to help them drive a lot more insights out of the same pool of data and translate that into revenue and profit fairly quickly. And we start to see that over and over again, and that's just really exciting. I think another angle of that, on the software piece, and I probably didn't quite appreciate it until about a couple months ago, is whatever the TAM you're thinking the software is addressing is wrong. What I really mean by that is, whatever we're thinking, for a particular industry, the software total addressable TAM, let's say, is 20% of the total spend because the rest is people. What AI is actually addressing for whoever that cracked the code is the entire pie, not just the existing software. So, to Nick's part, AI is getting everywhere, is AI is directly addressing the labor issue in every single vertical. So we'll say the TAM is a lot bigger, and then the ones that race ahead and crack the code is going to just unlock a lot of opportunities. I mean, look, the opportunities is really different. So for 2022, a lot of the small caps that fell a lot, they're unprofitable stocks whose growth was extrapolated by COVID. So, when COVID ended, all of a sudden people realized this is a COVID beneficiary, the growth is unsustainable, and you are still unprofitable. Interest rate went from 0 to 5. Good luck to you if you're a small company. Well, we end up picking, at the end of 23 and all throughout 24, every single stock we own in the small mid-cap portfolio, it was true from day one, it's still true today. They're all profitable. They all generate positive free cash flow, and none of them have a very levered balance sheet, which really means that their growth is not dependent on the capital market. They can sustain this kind of growth themselves. I think the second really big thing is there was no generative AI back in 2022. So a lot of these, little companies across different areas that we find, they're all secret or sometimes obvious beneficiaries of AI. So you have that earnings reacceleration, and then you just have the massive valuation support that the small caps in 2022 never had. On the market cap side, we wanted to make this a true to label small mid cap fund. So we have a really simple rule. As soon as a stock becomes so big that it gets included in the MSCI large cap index, we are committed to selling the stock out of the small mid cap fund within 30 days. Obviously, I have the unfair advantage of then I can turn around and just pitch it to Nicholas and continue to make money of that stock. But for the SMID fund, we will keep it true to label. We've been an admirer of the company for a long time. Frankly, probably kept missing it. And what's really helped us at Bayer Palantir is the math should have never quite stack up on the earnings growth and the multiple you have to pay. So that's really what keeps us at bay. But great companies, incredible what they're doing.
Yeah, within our process, obviously, we set price targets, but they're 5-year price targets based on 5 years of earnings. We're not doing DCFs. And so sometimes there's great companies that we really like, but we just can't get it to add up from a risk-reward point of view. Tesla's another good example. We really like the company, but we just can't get it to add up from a risk-reward point of view. And the problem with these really high multiple stocks is when they start going wrong, you really can't hold your view. You can't defend yourself because you don't actually know what it's worth. And so that's why we don't use DCFs. That's why we use 5-year price targets. And that's why generally our funds are probably slightly lower in valuation than other growth products out there.
Cool. Before I conclude today's presentation, is there a final thought from James, Qiao and Nick that you'd love to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, so for the climate fund, Qiao mentioned the US, the house is leaking, the roof's falling in. It's the same with the climate era in terms of power generation, the grid and so forth. It's very old. So that would be my key sort of takeaway. There's a huge runway for growth for the companies that are helping to harden the grid effectively and increasing the renewable power generation and electricity generation in the US.
Yep, for the small mid-cap space, I would just say valuation is still low, growing really fast, and the opportunity set is just incredibly rich. These ideas are just coming out at us everywhere.
Yeah, look, from my point of view, it's going to be a noisy year. Try and ignore the noise. It'll be a slightly more volatile year, but it should still be a positive year. Ultimately, this is going to come down to, can we find the area of structural growth? Will that structural growth equal earnings growth for the companies we pick? And that earnings growth will give us share price growth and drive us towards our winners. That's what's really going to matter. That's the report card we hopefully get to present next year and well into the future. And so from our point of view, take a bit more of a broader approach so you don't get pushed around too much by the market, and try to ignore the noise has been my strong message, and I'm sure you'll be saying that to your clients as well.
Fantastic. So this will conclude the formal part of today's catch-up. We did promise to have you out of here right on 2 o'clock, which it is. A massive thank you to our Melbourne audience. A big thank you for your time today and obviously your ongoing support. A really big thank you to James, Qiao and Nick for your insightful presentation today. And it's fantastic to see that you remain really quite excited about the opportunities presenting themselves and are using this volatility to position the fund to generate meaningful returns for our investors in the months and years ahead. One team, one dream, 4 funds, all derived from the same investment process, all designed to fill a particular global equity growth bucket for you, your clients and investors alike. All 4 funds are highly regarded by asset consultants and research houses, recommended ratings with Lonsec and Zenith across all their major investment platforms, with 3 of the funds also available as active ETFs on the ASX. The team at Munro and the team at GSFM will be around for another 20 or 30 minutes, so if you do have time, we'd love to catch up and hear the latest from yourselves. If not, wishing everyone a fantastic 2025. We go around again, and we look forward to staying in touch and catching up less formally soon. Thank you.